Hello, everyone. This is Margaret Manning with 60 and Me. This is the place where women over 60 come to be inspired. And my guest tonight is Prill Boyle. She is an author, a teacher, a TV host, and she is also an inspirer of women. So, Prill, I'm so glad to welcome you here tonight. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Margaret. So good to be here too. I aspire to be an inspirer.
Well, I have read some of your book, and so I know you are an inspirer. So, Prill, let's start at the beginning here. You are an author of a book that talks about the fact that it's never too late for women of any age to reinvent themselves and to find their true passion and purpose in life. And I would love to ask you what inspired you to get started with this task, and where was your motivation in starting that?
My motivation really started back in 2000, actually not even in 2000, in 1996, 1997. I was teaching community college, and I was teaching a wide range of students. And I thought I was always looking for things that would inspire my students to keep going, not to give up on themselves, not to give up on their dreams. And at that point, I read an article in the New York Times about a 65-year-old woman named Winnie Jonker who joined the Peace Corps at that age. And she reminded me of my students. Like some of them, she was a single parent. Like some of my students, she had, been going to school nights and weekends. And yet she had still fulfilled this dream that she'd had for years and years and years. And I thought, I'm going to write a book about people like this. People, ordinary people, not famous people, but ordinary people who don't give up on themselves, who don't give up on their dreams.
Now, that is amazing. So the stories in this book are incredible, and some of them are truly remarkable. And I think that what you've just said, though, is very important to this community. 60 and Me is 30,000 women now, over 60 years of age. And these are women who are sometimes, you could consider them ordinary women. They're not celebrities. They're not people. They're like me and you. They're just normal people that have been through 6 decades of amazing experience and maybe have not developed the skills to feel confident enough to make those steps forward that you described. So give me an example of one of the women that really inspired you, that can help us to understand the risks that you have to take when you're making those big decisions.
Well, one of the women that inspired me, really perhaps most inspired me, and that's difficult to say when you've interviewed, like I have, over 100 women from all walks of life. And by the way, just to interject here, I'm really glad that you defined what I meant by ordinary by just saying not a celebrity. I mean, none of us are really ordinary, but ordinary in that sense. But there's one woman, and her name is Patricia Simons, and she didn't even have a high school diploma at age 40. And she didn't think she was smart. She grew up in Liverpool, England, and the nuns in Liverpool gave her the message, sent her a clear message that she wasn't smart. In any event, she ends up getting a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD from Brown University, from an Ivy League school in the U.S. in anthropology. She didn't even know she was interested in anthropology at age 40. Fast forward to age 60, she has written a dissertation and done the research by living in Thailand among the Hmong tribe, and she is hired by Brown University, this woman that doesn't think she's smart. She's hired to teach anthropology at Brown University at age 60. She's in her 80s now. You can go on the web. She still occasionally teaches classes there. But she taught there full-time for years. Mm-hmm. She's an amazing, amazing woman who discovered who she was later in life. She'd been working full-time as a medical technician. But then she had this whole Encore career that really drew out her passion later in life. I love this woman.
That is a fantastic story. And, I forgot to say that the name of your book is Defying Gravity. And I love that title because there's an element there of persistence and determination. That word defying, and it's in a way one of the characteristics of our age. We grew up in the 60s where we were always, thinking about alternative ways of doing things and defying the status quo. So it's a great title. But I wanted to just ask you about these words like defiance and determination, because We've talked about this before. This is a really tough time to be alive. There's a lot of challenges. It really, I mean, there's the financial issues that we all are facing. There's just the issues of isolation, our families not being close to us sometimes. And, there's this quality of resilience that people who seem to build strong resilience can bounce back from these challenges. And I just wondered if I could get your opinion on what you think, some of the qualities are that make a resilient woman.
Yes. So, first of all, I love the word resilience, and I really think resilience is so important. Apart from defiance, when I called the book Defying Gravity, what I was thinking about is defying the weight of societal expectations of age and gender. We have both of those going for us or against us. Defying the weight of family history. For instance, the woman I just told you about, Patricia Simons, her family never went to college either. So she had to defy that weight, and defying the weight of our ideas of ourselves. And so the question about resilience gets into how does one defy those weights? And one thing that I've done is I do something that I term to myself a bold thing every day. So in other words, from January 31st, 2000, when I first read about this woman that I told you about, Winnie Jonker, that joined the Peace Corps. I first read about her in 2000. And from that day, the day that I got the idea to write the book, I thought, if I want to be resilient, if I want to not give up on myself, I'm going to have to exercise those muscles, my brave muscles, my courage muscles. And so I started doing something every day that scared me. It doesn't have to be, and I still do it when I use the present tense. Margaret, I still do this to this day. It's been 13 years. And sometimes it's as little as Skyping with Margaret Manning.
That's a pretty bold thing.
This is very bold. I mean, I'm not very used to using Skype, so this is a little bit outside of my comfort zone. It could be something as small as riding my bike to the beach along the bike lanes with the traffic coming. Mm. It could be something as big as going to Africa, which I did in 2007. I traveled by myself to Botswana with a 75-year-old, at this point, Peace Corps volunteer. Wow. She was already based there. We hitchhiked across northern Botswana. That trip was full of bold things. But the point isn't necessarily about me. The point is that resilience is something that you can exercise, you can build. Ideally, it's something that parents should teach their children, or grandparents can work with their grandchildren. But the way that I do that is by just exercising it each day, not allowing myself to lose heart.
And what about just the practical things of how you approach those bold things? I mean, do you try to do things that you're comfortable with, but yet pushes just a little bit outside the box, or do you try to just not choose black and white and just go for that crazy thing ahead of you?
As I said, it's been 13 years, so I've done all
fantastic
mutations of this. Sometimes I've decided that I'm just going to say yes to everything. Mm-hmm. And, when somebody calls me and says, do you want to come to a party, even though I don't want to come, because I tend to be, even though I'm very personable, I'm introverted. Mm-hmm. So I'll just say yes, 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 yes. Mm. Sometimes I practice saying no, 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 no. Mm. Other times I just do something that makes me a little uncomfortable. And other times I try to go for the big thing, like I said, something like going to Africa or calling a TV producer or whatever. Mm-hmm. Even matter of fact, you said that I was a TV host. And the way I got that job is a local producer called me up one day and said that their normal host had suddenly quit on them, and would I take over? And I thought, well, I'm in my yes mode.
Yes.
I'll have to say yes. I didn't even necessarily want to do it. And I said yes. Yeah. And she said, can you start today? And I said yes. And it led to so many wonderful things. I met incredible women on this show.
Yeah. I think you've raised some really fascinating points here, that there's a lot of women in the community who are not used to saying yes. And I think this is, you mentioned it earlier, that we establish these routines and these habits that that we are victims to, we become a prisoner to, and that moving to that next level that you've described, and finding your purpose and your passion in life, It's just a matter of having being a bit bold and a bit brave and shattering some of those stereotypes that you've defined for yourself. Not even mentioning the ones that society puts on top of us. But speaking of that, you mentioned earlier about one of the women you'd interviewed being able to give her an encore. I think you called it an encore career. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to ask your thoughts on this because in the community, a lot of women tell us that they are either being pushed out of a job, like a forced retirement. Nothing, of course, is legally, you can't let someone go in most countries, but it happens. Or they feel that they want to try something that they just are enjoying. They're not happy in their job. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on how you build a career that is something you love and, that you do for the rest of your life and build a business that, satisfies you. What are the things you can do to give yourself a direction, forward?
Well, this is a complicated question. I mean, there's several parts to this question. There's some practical aspects like how can you build a business based on a passion? And I can tell you a story about that. So I'll start there. And then we can ask, we can address some of the other elements of the question, which is how do you even find a passion?
Yes.
I mean, that's the main question. One way that you can start an Encore career, and this works very well if you already have a career and you haven't quite been pushed out, but you're going to be. Mm-hmm. In other words, you have a way to support yourself temporarily. And that is you can start by doing volunteer work in the area that you're interested, or if it's a business that you want to grow, you can start doing it on a very small scale. For instance, this person I interviewed became a baker in midlife. Mm-hmm. This is a he. Normally, I've written about women, but I've also interviewed men and women. Mm-hmm. And he had been a dentist his entire adult career. I shouldn't say adult. I mean, I don't know any child dentists.
There's a connection between eating and dentist. I don't know quite what it is.
Well, one thing leads to the other in some way. But anyway, he had been a dentist, and he had been a dentist primarily because he wanted a career that would support a family. Mm-hmm. So he did it for economic reasons. And he also did it because it was sort of the family career. Mm-hmm. In other words, his father had been a dentist before him. But what he really loved was baking. This is a man, he loved to bake. And he had learned to bake at his Jewish grandmother's, knees when he was a little child and had been baking his entire life. And he decided that what he really wanted to do was to bake professionally and to make a career of it. Mm. And so in his late 50s, he started segueing into being a baker. And what he did is he started simply baking for friends, baking for parties, just baking. And then he started when he got a lot of rave reviews, he started taking his baked goods around to different, restaurants and places, right, and to just, to show them what he was doing and to say, I'd like to bake. Anyway, one thing led to the other, and he is indeed a professional baker at a wonderful restaurant in D.C. at this point, and he makes a living doing that. So, that's one way to do it, to sort of segue from having a hobby to making a career.
Yeah, that's a fascinating story. I mean, and there's so many, and what you described there is at the surface could appear a very impractical career. I mean, how are you going to make a living from baking? But if you love it and you put your heart into it, you can do this. And we've actually got the benefit now in our time of so much technology that enables us to to do these things and to start businesses that and to deliver your services online or in your own hours, in your own time, that weren't really around years ago.
And to get word of mouth out.
Yeah.
Speaking of baking, my neighbor is in her 60s, and she bakes on the side. And she makes these amazing, amazing cakes. And she made an amazing cake for my mother's 90th birthday. Wow. A garden cake. It was a whole garden on the top with trellises, flower. It was beautiful. It was like my mother's garden. And I put pictures of it online, and other people started calling her for business. Mm-hmm. So technology really can open up a lot of avenues.
Yeah, I think that a lot of women are taking advantage of that now. And but you were saying earlier, let's go back to how you get to the thing that you're passionate about, because I think that is actually where you obviously have to start. Because there's no point in opening a pet business if you don't like dogs. Right. You've got to be kind of at peace with what you choose to be your passion. So, what are the signs we can look for? Where do we go in our hearts and our heads to figure this out?
Well, I think you just answered the question. You go in your heart and your head. So
Okay.
you go inside, because
Yeah.
what I found, I thought this was so fascinating as I was interviewing people. What I found is that the seeds of their passions were always there. There might be exceptions to this somewhere, but I have not personally interviewed somebody that just out of the blue came up with an idea.
Mm-hmm.
One woman, for instance, became a flight attendant at 71 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
It was something she wanted to do her whole life, but she had almost forgotten it. She had been a bank vice president for years and years and years and
Mm-hmm.
retired and was bored in retirement. It's not so much that she needed the money, but she was not stimulated. And she thought,
Yeah.
if I live to be
Exactly.
90 or 100, what do I want to really do with my time? And anyway, she started sort of excavating her past, asking herself, what did I used to like to do? What did I want to do years ago? And she realized that she used to be standing out. She used to stand out on the tarmac when you used to be able to do that at an
Mm-hmm.
airport. At the Raleigh-Durham airport when she was a kid, and she would watch planes land and take off. And she used to think that was where she would go to neck with her boyfriends.
Wow.
I mean, again, you have to think
Good
that she's now an
association.
80s. So this is, a
That's
flash from
cute.
the past, no security lines. And she used to say, she said to me, she said, I used to dream of being a flight attendant, of having one of those hats with one of those, the little
Little
pins that they used
flags.
to
Yeah.
have. Exactly.
Yeah, it's great.
For her demographic, I don't think I'm dating myself. And so anyway, she just decided this is what she wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, then comes the question, and this also relates to what you're asking about, which is how do you make this happen? How do you make that happen? How do you get somebody at 70 years of age, 71, to hire you as a flight attendant? And what she did is she knocked on door after door after door. And I'm talking metaphorically, obviously. And she would get all the way through the interview process up until the end, and then they'd have some excuse as to why they weren't going to hire her. And I say excuse because she felt it was pretty transparent that it was age discrimination. And she thought to herself, well, I don't want to just keep, knocking my head against the wall. What can I do creative, to get a foot in the door? And she thought to herself, I'm going to become a gate agent. And so she applied to U.S. Air Express to become a gate agent. They wanted her for that immediately. And making her intentions known from the very beginning that she wanted to be a flight attendant. When the next flight attendant class came up, the brass at US Air, came to her and asked her, they
That is
invited
so.
her, and she flew for them, Margaret, for almost 10 years. She
Wow.
said to me she wanted to
That's
die in the
amazing.
sky, but she got
Wow.
grounded because she got a pacemaker put in.
That is amazing. That is a great story. That's one of the things I've always wanted to do, actually. I thought flying would be such a fun career. But, I think what you said, that actually is a really practical thing, which is if you go back to your childhood, your teenage years, and you remember what was it that made you smile and made you excited. And, so many women in our age group, in the 60s, they got married to their high school boyfriends. They stayed in the same town. They had children. It was just kind of the cultural thing of women who are 60 today to make those early commitments. And so maybe if we rewind a little bit and think, what was it we loved to do back then? That might give us an idea of a business that we could do for the rest of our lives and love to go to
Exactly.
work, be our own boss.
Something else that I did for myself that was
Yeah.
so helpful is I wrote and I know this sounds a little morbid, but I wrote my
Hmm.
obituary.
No, I've
So
heard this is
I
hopeful.
imagined I had lived to be at least 90 years old, and I wrote from the perspective of somebody writing about me after I died. And it was very illuminating. And so I think I did this at about age 45. So from age 45 on, I had to make it all up. And I just decided to go wild, to not censor myself.
Yeah.
And that's where I came up with the idea of being a writer. It was through that.
And I read that you actually didn't your book didn't sell to the first person that you sent it to. That the first publisher didn't buy it. It was it 10 or 12 tries that you had to go
It was a
through?
lot of tries,
Yeah,
exactly. My
and
agent sent it around and sent it around.
that is determination. That is resilience.
That's
That's
resilience, exactly.
And I think that's actually what makes life fun as well. Just that, that just you're not going to give up, that you're going to keep trying and you will succeed. So I think you actually, when we spoke last time, you said to me something about the three characteristics? It was keep moving, what is it?
Keep moving, keep working, and keep connected.
Yes. And that is to me, I actually, when we spoke last time, I wrote those down because they actually were a mantra that I thought was really critical for not just for your psychological health, but your physical health too. And that last one about connecting, I just wanted to ask you about that because how much significance do you put to social connections and family and communities like 60 and Me in your experience with these women you interviewed?
I think connection is extremely important. I also think that on one level, the company you keep determines your character. Mm-hmm. So in other words, I think that's not an original statement, but I think that if you, for instance, in 60 and Me, but in any community, if you stay connected with and gravitate towards people that are trying to, make themselves better people, I don't really like that terminology, but make the world a better place. In other words, getting away from that kind of value-laden technology, using one's talents. If you're around people that are vibrant, energetic, using their talents, exploring their talents, that's infectious, and I think it's really important. That's over and above the importance for us psychologically of staying connected as we get older. By the way, those three things, stay connected, stay moving, and stay working. And by working, the person that told me those three things meant, working on all different levels. It doesn't necessarily have to be that you have to have, a paid career at 90. But that woman was a gerontologist. So she's somebody that studies aging. And that was her, in a nutshell, that's what she said she has learned and what she advises other people.
Yeah, I think that when you look at brain health too, all the research that's being done around keeping your brain healthy after 60, those qualities are definitely the priorities of exercise and keeping healthy, keeping your mental stimulation and being connected to people, having a social context. But anyway, this has been so fascinating. I wanted to make sure that people knew how to get a hold of you because tell me, your book is called Defying Gravity, and
it's called Defying Gravity.
Yeah.
An easy way to get in touch with me is through my website, which is just www.prillboyle.com. And Prill is for Priscilla. It's Prill. B as in Bob, OYLE.com. I answer all letters. I'm very interested in connecting. We were just talking about connecting. Yes. Very interested in connecting with people and hearing people's stories.
Well, I'm sure that people will love to reach out to you. And I know your website is really inspirational, and it's got the stories of the 12 women that you've selected from your book that are that represent these wonderful, extraordinary women. But you also, just to close, you also do speaking engagements, don't you?
I do. I've done quite a bit of speaking over the years. I even spoke at the United Nations. I was honored to be able to do that. I did several speeches in Botswana in cooperation with the Peace Corps. I do a lot of local speaking, some of it for free, some of it for pay. I do some Skyping. I said I'm not completely comfortable with Skype, but I am bold and try it each time. And am happy to do that with book groups as well.
That's great. Well, we will have you back on to talk about this again, and I'd love to share more stories with you because this is, honestly, it's been really inspirational, Prill. Thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to close with? Any last message for our community of women?
I guess I would just say, be bold. What do you have to lose? And then I would also say, you know what, Margaret? This has been my pure pleasure.
It has been great to talk with you, Prill. Take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you, too.
Okay. Bye-bye.